Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the expansion Buffalo Wings. And this should be a relatively quick episode. It's Friday the 19th as I am recording this. Finally got the first episode posted yesterday. Posted a couple more today. This will be the fifth episode in the series. But this is my first time to really kind of react in real time to the first couple videos being out there. Some of the feedback and questions and thoughts that I've gotten from the viewers. So I wanted to kind of address as many of those things as possible in one place. First of all, thank you to everyone who's commented on, watched the video. I really appreciate the enthusiasm. Was not sure how this was going to be received, and it's been blowing me away with how much interest there has been in this series. So thank you so much for watching our previous videos and watching this video, and hopefully watching more videos in the future. And thanks again to ZenMaster61 who came up with the Reddit post, how to create a more realistic expansion team that inspired this adventure that we're about to go on. I will link to that Reddit post in the description of this video. I've also linked to it in the comment section of previous videos, the description section of previous videos, so you should be able to track that down if you want to see the ins and outs of how to do this. Those of you who have watched my previous series know that I tend to play in challenge mode, and I don't tend to mess with the settings very much, so I am definitely not an expert on commissioner mode or game settings. And I was able to figure it all out based on what ZenMaster61 put out there. So I'm sure that if I can do it, just about anybody can do it if you're going to try to do something similar in your own playthrough to what I'm trying to do here. So the first question is, how did we get here? And I've been putting up OOTP primarily videos for a couple of years now, and certainly want to give a shout out to those who came before me and who've done this for longer than I have and better than I have. But you know, the four that I view most often today, PF Holden, Sergeant Mushroom, Around the World Sports, and Sporer, who started a new series, which was great to see. Those are probably the four content producers that I've watched the most over the years, and really appreciate what they all do, learn a lot from all of their videos. And I wanted to make sure that I did something different than what those guys do this year. You may remember last season I did a Kansas City Royals playthrough, and PF Holden, who's the one of the godfathers of this genre, also did a Kansas City Royals playthrough. And when I put out my video of 10 challenging teams to consider in OOTP 24 a couple of months ago, I guess it probably was at this point, the Detroit Tigers were the team that at that time I was most likely to go with for the long-term playthrough. I thought that would be a real interesting challenge. And then when PF Holden started posting some videos with OOTP 24 coming out, it sounded like Detroit was a team that he was strongly considering. And it seems like we have a pretty similar thought process about what an interesting challenge would be. And I just didn't want to be going up against the 800-pound gorilla in the genre by having the same team as him this season. So I had been also thinking about an expansion team, and I had seen the Reddit post, how to create a more realistic expansion team from ZenMaster61, probably over a year ago, and it was something I was always thinking about in the back of my mind. Thought it would be interesting to do, thought it would potentially be more rewarding than the rather simplistic expansion that can take place through OOTP out of the box. And I wanted to make sure that even if somebody else was going to do that in OOTP 24, that I did it in a different way, and I thought that building the minor league system for 3 years before we start playing major league games in this upcoming season 2026 would make things a little different, and then picking a city that probably isn't in the top 5 options for actual MLB expansion when it does happen would also hopefully ensure that I was doing something a little bit unique. So for me, that took out Nashville and Charlotte and Portland, probably San Antonio or Austin. You know, those I'd say are some of the more prominent cities that have been mentioned for expansion, but there are certainly others too. I would think that Buffalo is, also behind the likes of Indianapolis, Salt Lake, and I'm sure there's others that I'm forgetting. So I thought Buffalo would be interesting. As I mentioned in the first episode, it's a city I have spent some time in. I've never lived there, but I always enjoy visiting Buffalo. Fun place, good people out there, great food, including buffalo wings. So that's why I named the team the Buffalo Wings. I know some of you have really commented that you like the name. Some of you have said it's about the least creative thing possible. I can't argue with that. But I enjoy eating buffalo wings. And there was also in OOTP this little Wings script logo. So apparently maybe there was a team called the Buffalo Wings at some point over the course of baseball history that I'm not actually aware of. So that's kind of how we got to where we are today. One of the other questions I've gotten from people is what settings are you using? So I'll answer that right now. I'm not going to go into every detail, just hit a few things using the complete scouting system, obviously. We've turned off owner goals. I always have in the past played with owner goals. Wanted to make this just more of a pure baseball playthrough. And in conjunction with that, I also turned off the storylines. So I'd say those are kind of the key setting changes I made globally. Players and team, right now I haven't messed with too much here. As I said, I really generally don't mess with the settings all that much. I obviously show personality ratings on the profile page. I don't think I really messed with anything else here too much. Again, I don't mess with the settings all too much, but some of you have asked about them, so I figured I'd at least let you know what I was doing. Face gen, don't do anything. AI, right now we're at 16 out of 20 on trading difficulty. When I did my mini series with the Yankees, it was 18. Felt that was, or maybe it was 20. I can't remember. It was either 18 or 20 when I did my series with the Yankees, and felt that it just was too difficult and too painful to actually make any trades. So I dialed it down to 16 for the mini series that we just finished up with the Reds. I'm keeping it there for now just to see how it works. It's possible I'll tick it up a couple notches as things go on, but for the time being, that's where it is. Using the hard mode for trading, I think that will be helpful in just ensuring that I can't optimize every tiny little piece of assets I get in return, whether it's cash, whether it's another prospect, or whether I'm just giving up the bare minimum possible by using the Make This Work Now button. So I think that was an important one to keep on in the settings. The reputation system I haven't liked. I turned that off. The trade deadline limit of all of the back and forth, and you can go through 16 different iterations of the trade deadline. That really hasn't interested me. So the trade deadline shows up on July 31st, and it is what it is. And have a bias towards ratings weight over current, previous, and 2-year ago stats. Almanac, I don't even know what this does. Database, I don't mess around with it. And then league settings, there will be a fair amount of things here. Obviously, I spent a lot of time editing league structures and doing league actions when I was going through all the permutations necessary to follow the instructions on how to do this that Zen Master 61 put out there. So I've spent a lot of time in there. League and teams, not really anything here. You can see we did end up going with 4 8-team divisions when all was said and done. So obviously made those changes here. For a long time I thought I was going to go with 8 4-team divisions, but since I kept the playoffs the same, as we will see shortly, I felt like with only 4 divisions, that would ensure that the 2 division winners in each leagues were the only teams that got buys. Everyone else was in the wild card pool. Puts a little bit more emphasis on the regular season, and being number 1 out of 8 teams in each division is also a pretty good achievement. Rules, I don't think I've really messed with too much here, quite honestly. I'm trying to think. I do allow trading of injured players, so that is one that I checked off. Other than that, though, I don't think I really changed anything in any of these settings. Financials, the only thing that I have done is I've got yearly inflation 0% to 0%. I know inflation happens in the real world. I know for most of us, we've been living through the worst inflation of our lives over the last couple of years. It just seems like the inflation is something that anecdotally has been, I don't want to say breaking games that have been long-term sims, but I've heard that it's caused some problems. So I figure if I just keep it at 0%, that's one less thing that can break. Obviously, that means we're not going to be seeing a player making 60, 70, 80 million dollars a year, 10, 20, 30 years in the future. But it kind of will help me if we end up playing decades ahead. We kind of know what a $5 million, $10 million, $25 million, $40 million player is in the current environment, and that stuff will all be the same. Don't think I changed any other settings at all on this page. Options, I did turn off the automatic evolution of the league. I've obviously expanded and moved some franchises myself, changed the awards to the proper names for the Bat and the Glove Awards. And as I talked about earlier, I did change the playoff settings. We can use custom playoffs right here. So, oh, did I just ruin this? These are not the playoff settings that I had put in. I'm thinking maybe it's possible that when I recently did the addition of the dummy Jacksonville and Tucson teams and put them into the league, and we were up to 34 teams, that it somehow defaulted back to something differently. So I will change this to what I want it to be and let you know what we're doing as far as the playoff settings. Glad that I checked on this. All right, so I had set this all up before. Apparently I lost it somehow, but now we are all set again. 12 out of the 32 teams are going to qualify for the playoffs. The division winners in each league will get the buys, and then there will be 4 wild card teams in each league. Still a best of 3 series for the wild card, all at the team with home field advantage. Best of 5 division series, best of 7 LCS, and best of 7 World Series, obviously. So the teams with the best records who win their divisions in each league will be the ones with the buys. So we'll confirm that custom playoff setup, and we're all set to go with that. As far as players, the only change I made here was to bump up the amateur draft pool origin from random places a little higher than the default. Historical, nothing here. Stats and AI. Oh, I did do something here. I took use of openers down to 1. I think the default was 2 or 3. Those of you who have watched me before know that I just think the opener thing is gimmicky. So I'm not going to prohibit it from happening, but hopefully it will happen very infrequently in this game. And then didn't adjust any of the statistical stuff. You know, in a perfect world, I would love the stats to be kind of more what I grew up with in the 1980s. So less home runs, less strikeouts than we have in today's game. But I just don't. My understanding, and this is not something that I've tweaked with or played with a ton in the past, but if you make one change to one thing, it can have knock-on derivative impacts on other things, and I'm just going to be comfortable living in the 2023 baseball universe that we live in today. So hopefully that answered any questions that were out there about the settings. Turning to our draft settings, and what we did was not entirely realistic in terms of how an expansion team has worked in the past, and who knows how an expansion team will work in the future. We kind of went, I think, in a middle ground between what Zen Master 61 did and what has happened in real life. Zen Master 61, I believe, in the information that he or she put out there, had that team picking 1st, 5th, 5th, and 10th, I believe, in the first 4 years before everything was just determined by the place in the standings. And what I've done with Buffalo and Nashville is we both picked in the early 20s before the playoff teams in 2023 and 2024. We moved down to around the 10 area last year in 2025. And we are going to be picking 1, 2 in the draft this year. And because Nashville has picked ahead of me 2 out of the 3 times in the previous drafts, and I also let Nashville have the first pick in the expansion draft, I'm going to give the Buffalo Wings the first pick in round 1 of this upcoming draft in 2026. Hopefully it's an opportunity for these 2 new franchises to both get a cornerstone player that their fan bases can get really excited about. It definitely is easier than the way it's worked in the real world in the past. Most recently, Arizona and Tampa Bay, who started playing in 1998, did participate in the draft in 96 and 97, but the owners put them with the last picks in the first round in both 96 and 97. I'm not really sure where they were in 98, to be honest. I'm guessing it was probably also last. Hold, please. I'll find out the answer. And that is really weird. According to the always 100% reliable Wikipedia, how could an encyclopedia that can be changed by anyone in the world at any given moment be anything except perfectly accurate? It doesn't seem like Arizona or Tampa Bay was given a first-round pick in 1998, their first year in the league, which is really strange. As I said, they picked at the end of the round, end of the first round, and then did a full draft after that in 96 and 97. It looks like they didn't get first-round picks in 98 in their first year in the league, and then in 99 they were both near the top of the draft, obviously, after a disappointing, but probably not unexpectedly disappointing first season for both of those teams, with the Rays, of course, taking Josh Hamilton, number 1 overall, back in 99. But it looks like they didn't give them picks their first year that they were actually playing in the majors. But we're going to assume that with the amount of money these new owners are going to be forced to put up for new teams, that they're going to hopefully get themselves a better deal to join the club. And regardless, Buffalo and Nashville are picking at the top of the draft in this upcoming 2026 draft, which is still many months away at this point. Taking a look at our farm system right now, we've gotten to the point where we're ranked 12th overall. So we've made some pretty good progress. Quite honestly, though, it's really all driven by Andres Medina, who we picked as, or we didn't pick, we signed as an international amateur free agent in 2024, just about 2 years ago, and he's still viewed as one of the top prospects in baseball. Other than that, we've only got one other top 100 prospect, but apparently having the number 5 prospect in baseball is going to help boost that number for us, and hopefully we'll be able to continue improving the farm system over the next couple of seasons. Talked about this a little bit in an earlier episode, but I felt like I wanted the minor league affiliates to make some sense. So we put affiliates for Buffalo in 3 cities that previously had affiliated teams in either the Eastern League or the New York Penn League that no longer do, Albany, Utica, and Jamestown. We've got Marathon down in the Florida A League, and then we've got FCL and DSL teams as well. We set up Nashville similarly, and I know some of you have asked me in the comments about this. What does their farm system look like? And the AI has been running it. I haven't looked at it in a year or so, so I don't know. I'm going to find out with you. Ooh, and they haven't made much in the way of improvement. They're 29th. So I am smarter than, well, I don't know if I'm smarter than the AI, but I am better at building a farm system that is viewed positively by OOTP than OOTP's AI is, at least in this one simple sample size. But although my prospects are better, their teams have been much more successful on the field. The only winning team I had last year was my AAA club in Albany. You can see they've got multiple winning teams throughout their system. Set them up somewhat similarly with FCL and DSL teams. Put a team in Orlando for the Florida State League, and then went to Lexington, Huntsville, and Clarksville in either in Tennessee or in neighboring states. Pretty good sized cities that I'm not 100% sure, but I didn't think there was any affiliated baseball in any of these cities today, which is why I ended up with them. I'm not going to say I had that perfectly vetted out, but I did try to do something somewhat logical with how those teams were set up. Also got some questions about the ownership for both Nashville and Buffalo, so we'll take a look at that. I just went with the default name of the random person that OOTP created for me. I could have went with, a titan of industry, a Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. Could have went with some rich private equity or hedge fund billionaire, but basically just let the mythical fictional owners take over for both teams. I did, and again, I am not an expert at commissioner mode. I am not an expert at editing things, but I did give both of the owners pretty similar profiles in Buffalo and Nashville. Made sure that their patience and fiscal personality were both pretty constructive, and then I just kept their involvement in priority on whatever randomly came up. So that's a quick look at the owner situation in Nashville. Pretty constructive. And when we look at the finances, they've got a budget of over $200 million, tied for 21st. Above average market size, very good fan loyalty, and fan interest is pretty high. They've actually lost some fan interest. I had both Buffalo and Nashville start out at 90. That is another setting that I did change for both teams. Figured out fans would be very excited to see these teams on the field. And it does look like the AI ownership has or the AI management has let that number contract a bit. But they've got tons of money to spend here as the offseason and free agency begins. I'm confident that they will be signing some big-time players going forward. And then the last thing that I got some questions about was the ballparks. I basically, in the case of Nashville, just kept the name of the current ballpark in Nashville. I did increase the capacity, and I really didn't. I don't think I tweaked too much as far as the dimensions of the stadium. If and when, actually, it won't happen. I was going to say, if and when we know what an actual Nashville stadium is going to look like, I would change these things, but I do think that will happen. And I do think that if there are two expansion teams, to me, it's almost guaranteed that Nashville will be one of them. I think just the demographics of Nashville as a city, the demographics of the South in general, it's hard for me to see a logical scenario where Major League Baseball would add two new teams and Nashville wouldn't be one of them. But clearly, although Manfred has said he'd like to expand to 32 teams at some point, there's no time frame on it. So I was going to say, once I know what the Nashville Stadium is really going to look like at the Major League level, I'll change these settings. But I'm not expecting to be doing this playthrough 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years from now, whenever that becomes a reality. So it's just going to be a made-up stadium that looks a bit favorable for home runs, particularly by right-handed hitters, generates fewer than average extra base hits. Turning to our ownership situation in Buffalo, made the patients lenient and the fiscal personality charitable. Exact same thing that I did with the ownership in Nashville. Kept the involvement and priority is exactly what they defaulted to. I did also change Joel Farmer's age. I made him 10 years younger than the mythical Joel Farmer was. I just didn't want to be dealing with a ownership change right away. Obviously, he could fictionally die at any time and need to be replaced, but I figured making him 10 years younger would decrease the chance of that over the next few seasons. I did think for a bit about making the Pagula family the owners. I know they own the Bills. I believe they also own the Sabres. So clearly they are prominent sports owners in Buffalo, and presumably if there really was a team in Buffalo, I would think they would likely be involved. But again, I just kept things fictional and tried to make the profiles of these owners be someone that would be constructive to work with over the coming decades. Last but not least, taking a look at what has happened to Solon Field in Buffalo. I tweaked the settings here just a bit. I did not make it an extreme ballpark like Coors or even Yankee Stadium. But I do, like extra base hits. I don't necessarily love as many home runs as we have in the game today, and I did want to make the park just as a small measure favor left-handed batters a little bit over right-handed batters. So it's not a purely antiseptic cookie cutter 1970s AstroTurf ballpark with perfectly even dimensions out to left and center and right, but it's also not that far off from being a cookie cutter ballpark. But I did kind of try to create something that was hopefully have enough space out in the outfield to generate a few extra base hits and a few fewer home runs than the average ballpark in MLB today, but certainly is not something that is going to lead us to making huge decisions based simply on the handedness of a pitcher or a hitter. And we'll finish things off just looking at the financial settings for the Wings, since we also glanced at them for Nashville. As I mentioned, we started fan interest at 90 for both. It's contracted in Nashville. It actually has expanded in Buffalo. When we went through the expansion draft, apparently several of the players that we picked in the expansion draft were very popular, and we got a boost for that. Fan loyalty put it, a good level. We'll see how that goes over the years and how that changes. But obviously, Buffalo is one of the smallest, if not the smallest, markets in Major League Baseball right now. So thought that the market size of small made sense for Buffalo. And you can see, even with a $150 million payroll or budget, we are going to be last in all of baseball in terms of our budget for 2026. So although we've got supportive ownership, I believe, we still are as small a market team as you can find in MLB, and we've got as small a budget as you can find in MLB. So as I mentioned in our last episode, my goal as we start getting this team ready for the 2026 season is to, in a perfect world, I just want to avoid 100 losses. If we get this team to 63-99, I will be more than content with that. Quite honestly, I don't even know how we're going to get there. We've got 20 players on the active roster right now. We did pick up some really interesting relief pitchers in the expansion draft. Unfortunately, those guys aren't going to be pitching tons of innings for us. We may look to trade Andres Munoz, excellent closer for Seattle, over 40 saves 3 straight years, but he was left open because he's making decent money for a 26-year-old reliever. We don't, I believe, need a front-end closer at this point in Buffalo Wings history. As I said, I think we're going to be losing a lot of games this coming season. It's a luxury that we don't need. We can kind of afford it because we don't have any other material salaries on the team at this point. But I may look to trade Munoz to maybe get a prospect or two from a team that is more likely to be in the pennant race than we are. That's really the reason why I picked him, to see if there was some value in potentially flipping him. So that's something that we're going to be investigating over the coming weeks as free agency begins and we approach the winter meetings, and then we also approach the Rule 5 draft on Christmas Day. How festive. The Rule 5 draft could definitely be an opportunity for us to add some players who are going to be pretty important to us because, as I mentioned, right now our proposed team is not strong, either in terms of the overall talent or also just in terms of the fact that we don't even have a 26-man roster yet at the major league level. In reinforcing that it could be a pretty difficult year for us when we look at our team positional rankings, at least according to the OSA, we are near the bottom of the league in terms of the talent we have just about everywhere, with 2 exceptions. Closer, where I mentioned we have Munoz and some other guys, so we're pretty strong there. And center field, where we right now don't even have anyone on the roster capable of playing the position, or at least has the position as their primary focus. So that doesn't even qualify as worse than the league, because right now we don't even have a body to put out there. So we've got a lot of work to do, and that's why I think if we can avoid 100 wins this upcoming season, it's going to be a good result for us. We'll take a quick look while we're on this screen and see what Nashville looks like. And you can see Nashville's done a lot better. Even when we were doing the expansion draft in our last episode, if you watched that, you may remember that I was looking for players to kind of bolster our farm system, picking a lot of 22, 23, 24, 25-year-old guys who while they don't look like frontline prospects, could potentially be guys who could contribute at the major league level in a couple of seasons. It looks like Nashville and their AI leadership has taken a bit of a different tack. Excellent reliever slash closer in Tyler Visa. And there are some positions similar to us, shortstop, left field, where they're near the bottom of the league. But you can see they're also middle of the pack in several positions at this point as well. So my expectation would be that Nashville will be a much better team than Buffalo among the expansion teams in this upcoming 2026 season. But that might not be the worst thing in the world, because when we get to the draft lottery for 2027, we will have for the 2027 draft, we will have a few more ping pong balls in the virtual hopper, so to speak, perhaps than Nashville if we have a rough year this year. So I don't want to stink forever, and I don't want to just kind of do a Philadelphia 76ers kind of process, or even kind of what the Houston Astros were doing like a decade ago or so, in just being a brutal team for several seasons in a row to ensure that we have the draft capital to build a future dynasty. I could do that, but outside of 2026, I'm going to want this team to be as competitive as possible. And I want us to be competitive and to win some games in 2026. But I think I'm just realistic that with what we have, if I threw all of my resources in free agency this offseason and in the expansion draft that we just did into trying to win now, we could probably get this team to 75 to 80 wins. But to me, if you're not in the playoffs, who cares if you've got 75 or 80 wins, especially in an expansion season? So I think my goal is to avoid 100 losses in this upcoming 2026 season, which may be difficult to do. I think it probably is going to be very difficult to do, but we do have some money to spend, and we've also got maxed out scouting development, $40 million in player development that we've been using over the last few years when we haven't had major league expenses. So we could certainly take some of those numbers down too, which will give us more money to play with. But if there is a youngish, high quality player available in free agency this year, we're certainly going to go after them. But I don't think that one or two players is going to be the difference between a 60-win team and a 100-win team. So as I said, hopefully we can at least avoid being completely unrespectable on the field this year. Maybe 2027 we can get ourselves into that 75-win range, respectable team on the field, and then would maybe hope that by the 2028 season we're competing to be a 500 team. And if we're a 500 team, there's always a outside chance that it's a down year and you can sneak into a fifth or sixth wild card. So we will see how that all goes over the coming weeks in real life and the coming seasons here in OOTP life. So for those of you who have been asking questions, I hope this episode was helpful. Hope it answered most of them. I'm sure there is a question out there that I didn't answer. So if there's something else you're interested in, put it in the comments and I'll try to answer it in an upcoming episode. I don't think I'll do another kind of deep dive into settings and owners and minor leagues and stadiums and the thought process behind everything I did like this episode. If you're still watching, I thank you, but I can understand this could be pretty boring and dry content. But if you do have questions about how things were set up that I haven't touched upon, if you throw them in the comments down below, I'll try to give you an answer in the comments and might mention it in an upcoming episode as well. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.